one. I
Oh, wow.
did, yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. Thanks, man. I did like a three-phase, well, it was a three-stage interview, talked to different people. So it's still within my Epic, the analytics and stuff. So I've
Right.
gotten a job now. So I'm still focusing on the project now and taking them slowly now because to be honest, I was in a state where it was a little bit of anxiety was coming in. You know, when nothing is coming in, you're using what was saved and all that stuff. But I thank God now I've gotten past that now. So I'm in a calm state now. So I can steadily go on with the AWS projects now.
Yeah, I understand. Congratulations.
Thank
So, but what I would say is now that you have your data analytics job back,
you.
right? Don't 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 slack on your AWS learning. So this is even a good opportunity for you to learn as much as you can learn on the AWS side and
Mhm.
start applying and start applying so that way, because right now you don't have the pressure of wanting to learn AWS as fast as you can learn it
Right,
to
right.
get the job. So now you have more time to relax. But I'm saying that don't get sidetracked from your data analytics job. Continue to learn your AWS job. And I still want you to keep that same goal you had for AWS and the same tenacity you had when you
Okay.
were learning it.
Yeah.
So at
I'm
least
gonna
just
keep up
have
with
it
it.
done and ready, and even just put your resume out there, keep applying.
Dude,
And
as we're
if
talking right now, there was a job that I applied for, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm,
And I've been pushing the interview. The lady got back to me. It's a security role.
okay.
She's like, "Hey man, you still want to? The manager is still waiting for you,
Mhm,
to come on and get this interview." I just feel like I'm not too fully prepared, so I've been kind of like been dodging. And I told her I'm going to schedule something this week so I can talk to the manager. It's a
mhm,
security role, and it's
mhm.
purely AWS security. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because I feel like, I need to do some stuff, but I might take it, just go out there and talk to them and see what it's like. Just get a feel for it and just do it. Might just do it.
Yeah. So that's good. So you guys continue to learn, and yes, just continue to do that, and go best of luck and on that job as well.
Okay.
And if you have the opportunity, I always tell everyone you can do both. At
Oh
least
yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal,
can
man. The
you
goal is to
can
do
you
both,
can
man.
do
That's the
both.
goal.
Yeah. So there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah.
Because nowadays it always feels like having one job is almost like having no job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
So yeah, congratulations on your new position, man. And
Thanks, man.
I wish you all the best on the AWS one. I think you're
Mhm.
doing good. So as long as you just maintain that consistency you've had this past couple of months, you should be fine.
Yeah. Thanks too, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Mhm.
All right. Does anyone else need help? So someone asked, how do you start? You want to start learning AWS and you have zero experience. So if you are starting with AWS and you don't have any experience at all, you don't know where to start, the best place to start is starting with the Cloud Practitioner course. The course, you can buy it on Udemy. And if you search on YouTube, you'll probably see it too if the Udemy one is costly for you. And the reason why I recommend that course is because if you are trying to learn AWS, that course is good for just opening your mind to what AWS is all about. So in that course, you will learn what is cloud, why do we need cloud, and what is AWS, what services do they offer, what are those services used for. So in that course, you just learn the basics of just what is cloud computing and what is AWS and what services do they offer and what the services are used for. So that's a really good way to start. Once you've done that, the next one I recommend is the Solutions Architect Associate course, because that also expand on what you will learn in the Cloud Practitioner. And in that course, you would learn those services on a deeper level where you will almost be thinking like a solutions architect. if a customer comes to you with a problem, what services would you recommend to help them solve that problem they have? So the solutions architect helps you think in that way. And I think those two courses are good for understanding the basics and understanding how to think from a solving problem standpoint. And once you are done with those two courses, you just have to look for hands-on projects and start doing hands-on projects. That's what I recommend. So instead of going for 4 or 5 certifications, you don't have to do that right away. Once you've gotten the basics, the fundamentals down in just those courses to understand what cloud computing and AWS is, start working on hands-on projects. So there's tons of hands-on projects you can find online. I have some of them. I have majority of them on my website in terms of the services you need to learn to be efficient as a cloud engineer. So if you are interested, you can check my website out. You also see the link in this video's description. So that's why I recommend for beginners to start with the cloud practitioner, then the solutions architect, then right after that, start doing hands-on project. Or if you want to join, the link is in this video's description. You can check out the link to join. All right. Okay. So does anyone else have needs help with something or anything else you guys want to discuss? Mr. Larry, do you have help? Do you need help? I see you are on mute, but I can't hear you.
Hold on 1 second. I need help.
Yes, sir.
Can you see my screen, please?
Yeah, I can see your GitHub.
I had this. Oh, sorry. You know what? It seems I can't.
It's failing because it says it can't check out your repository.
No, not that one. I posted it on the Slack channel. So,
Okay.
but
Let me see. Just a second. Mhm. So it's the issue you're having with your GitHub Actions project. And which job did you just run that you're having the issue? Is it this one?
No, not this one because I was being overcharged over the week, so I have to delete
Okay.
everything. So
All right. So you said you posted it in the
yeah,
Slack channel.
yeah.
Okay, let me check. And what were you?
I was running the entire code of the CI/CD pipeline. So it got stuck on the. So it goes. Let me copy the.
I don't see. I don't see.
I'm scrolling down now. 1 second. Scrolling down to see the code. Okay, this. Let me copy the error to you. Send it to you.
Yeah, but in order to, we have to know what job you are running where you got that error from. This is not going to help pretty much us understand where the error is coming from. We have to know what job you are running. This could just be that you need to update the version of the runner you are using.
Yeah, I did updated it, but I did updated the version of the. Anyway, I did because I changed the version from version 1 to 2, then another one from 3 to 4. So I was still getting the same error, and I changed it back again, still getting the same error. So, but it's just that I deleted my EC2 instance. So unless maybe if there is time, I will recreate another one, then we'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But you can go ahead with somebody else or do something else so that I will try to run the job underneath and see if I can represent it again.
So yes, once you run the job, send us the screenshot of the job that failed, if it fails. That's
Okay.
how we'll know where that's where I will know to pinpoint where the error is. Then we can look on that job and see the reason why that job is failing. But from what I can see here, it could be just a version issue, right? So did you confirm that the version is available when you changed it?
Yeah, I check it on GitHub
Okay.
and the
Okay.
version is available. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to run the job, and when any of the jobs fail, then we can look at it from there. Because this error message does not really, like looking at this last job you ran, at least with this one, I can tell where it failed. And that one was just saying it's failing to check out your repository.
No,
So,
finally got the repository resolved.
oh, okay, you got,
Got
okay.
it resolved. I was able to resolve that one. Then
Okay.
going to another level, that was where was the error.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes, let me know if you start working on it, if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. John, you are welcome. 2 hours 2 hours a day of working on your project is very good. Yeah. So 2 hours a day is very good. So thank you. I always appreciate your support and your feedback. Thank you so much. No. So AWS does not. Someone asks, is there a way to create a free AWS account without adding your credit card? No. So as you know, AWS service is pay as you go, meaning that AWS will only charge you for the services you are running and how long you leave that service running. So if you don't use a service, AWS is not going to charge you for it, even if you give them your credit card information. So if you are afraid of getting charged, what you have to do is, majority of the resource we use in completing our project does not really have high bill on it, with the exception of the RDS instance. So if you are using and I did a video recently explaining how to navigate completing your project on AWS without getting charged a lot of money. So some of the things is you just understanding what service in AWS is free and what service is pay as you go. And this is also a good opportunity to dive into the documentation on the pricing and see, okay, what is the pricing? For example, I have an S3 bucket. I probably have like more than 20 S3 bucket in my account. I have some of them, I have a lot of files in it. Some of them I barely use. And yet I don't get charged for S3. And the reason is because if you look at AWS pricing for S3, you would have to store a large amount of data in your S3 for you to start seeing charge, because the pricing for it is very cheap. If you look at things like EC2 instance, for example, even when you open your account for the first time, AWS gives you the first 12 months for free, meaning that you can run the T2 micro EC2 instance and AWS will not charge you for it. So you can run it for the first 12 months or for a certain amount of hours within that 12 months, whichever one you hit first. So if you guys are trying to just complete your project and you don't want to get charged, understand the pricing of the services, understand which service are free and which service cost the most. Things like RDS and NAT gateway usually cost a lot. So the idea is to complete your project in a timely. If you can complete your project within a couple of hours to a day, typically you won't see any charge. And if you know you have to step away, for example, when I was completing my project, and even now, I still do it now, if I've created my VPC with NAT gateway and maybe an EC2 instance and RDS instance in it, if I know I can complete the project that day and I need to step away, what I would do is I'm going to stop the EC2 instance, right? You can also stop your RDS instance. AWS has the feature to stop it. So when you stop it, AWS will not charge you for them. The NAT gateway, since AWS charge you for that, I'm going to delete the NAT gateway and release the elastic IP that are allocated to the NAT gateway. So once I do that, I'm fine. I can step away from my project and the rest of the service I have there, like the VPC, AWS will not charge me for those. Then when I return to my project, when I was working on my project in the beginning, that's what I used to do. And I still do it now. When you now return, you have to now recreate your NAT gateway and update your route table. This will also help you learn the process of just creating your VPC, setting up your route table. These are all the things that I used to learn AWS. Like I was telling someone yesterday, doing the hands-on project, I don't expect you guys to do the hands-on project. Obviously, if you are following me along and you are doing everything exactly how I'm doing it, you shouldn't have any issues completing the project. But I don't recommend, I almost don't pray you guys complete your project in one go, by not having any issue or not having to dive into the documentation. You won't really learn that way. The point of the project is understanding everything you are doing from the reference architecture standpoint. You must know where to reference the documentation. If someone asks you, for this project, you are using this resource, why did you do it this way? You must be able to back up your argument from knowing where the documentation is. So the project is more than just creating the project and completing it. It is also understanding how to reference documentation, understanding how to do research, understanding how to troubleshoot when you run into any issues. And also another one that I was explaining yesterday to someone that asked a question is understanding how to ask for help too. Because all these things that I've mentioned are exactly what your day-to-day like. that is exactly what your day-to-day will be like when you start working as a cloud engineer. On a day-to-day, you will be referencing. I don't think there's ever been a day where we don't reference documentation. You'll be referencing documentation. On a daily basis, you'll be troubleshooting something. And if you've troubleshoot something and you're still getting stuck, you don't quite know how to resolve it, you would have to send a message to your group asking questions. And also on a day-to-day, you are always doing research. You're always searching for answers to something on Google or whatever documentation is out there. So all these things, I don't want you guys to underestimate it when you start. I don't want you guys to underestimate it and ignore it when you are working on your project. It is part of your learning process. I always say it, and I probably sound like a broken record now. The project is not meant for you to just complete something and have it stored in your GitHub repository so you can present it. It is good that you've completed the project, but it is even more important to add this key thing that I'm saying to it, which is understanding how to reference the documentation, understanding how to troubleshoot, understanding how to ask for help when you need one, and the way you frame your question is also important. And there's one more that I said that I just forgot. So it's like those 4 things you have to understand. And those are very important when you are completing your project. So don't worry about putting your card in AWS. If you complete your project in a timely manner, they won't charge you. Even now, sometimes I can work on a project and I probably don't even get charged at all in a month. And also, if you need to step away from your project, delete some of the resources you know AWS will charge you for. If the resource has a stop feature, stop it. If it doesn't, delete it. And when you return, recreate it and continue working on your project. I mean, those are the ways around it. Yeah. So does anyone else have any question?
Also, you can set budget alerts actually.
That's
that's what I do.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think in the beginning of the project, and I have the video on my YouTube channel somewhere, how to set budget for the month. That's a good point what I've just made. You can create an alarm, and I have the video on my YouTube where that shows you how to set up the alarm, a budget alarm. I actually just got an alarm sometime this week because I set a $10 budget and AWS sent me a notification saying that I'm already at my $10 limit. So when you get that alarm, you can go in your AWS account and see what resources you have running. Because sometimes you will forget some resources. So I've done it many times. So you can go in your account, see what resource you have running. Then you can decide whether you want to stop them, delete them, so you don't get charged. But yes, setting the budget is a good way of being able to catch how much you are spending in your account before it goes crazy. Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead, Stuart.
Oh, great. Thanks, Aziz. This is my first call. I'm studying for the associate's exam now. I'm just not sure, would it be better to have the exam passed before I take on the projects, or do you think it would be better to almost use the projects as a study material, or would that is the issue?
Yeah, so don't wait till you pass the exam before you start the hands-on project. But I only recommend that you go through the course in its entirety before you start the project. You understand? So you don't have to. You guys can take your certification exam at any time you want. If you want, you can wait till you wait a couple of months or however, whenever you feel comfortable with taking the exam. So you don't have to pass the exam to start the hands-on project. But once you have done the cloud practitioner course, you have that course down, you understand, and you've also done the solutions architect, just even because you watch the course multiple times, but just going through it for the first time, you have a good understanding of it, start the hands-on project. I agree with what you said. Doing the hands-on project, a combination of you completing the course and now working on hands-on project will give you a deeper understanding of everything you are doing, which will help you during the exam. So I recommend that you mix both together before you work on the exam.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Stuart, welcome. Certainly glad you are here. Happy to have you here. So like I was mentioning to you in the message, we have this meeting every Saturday. So if you feel, I know at this stage you haven't started working on the hands-on projects. So when you do, feel free to use our Slack group to ask questions. You can also message me on Slack, or you can post your question in the Slack group. People there are usually very helpful. And on Saturday, we meet here. And it's just an open floor for any question anyone has at different stage of their project. So even if we are talking about something now, like we were just recently talking about the GitHub Actions, I know it's something you haven't started. It's just a way to see what other people are working for and what to expect. So feel free to ask any question here if you have any questions, and also message me on Slack. If it's something you don't want to post in the group, you can message me directly. And if you need to schedule a time, sometime during the week that is not this Saturday, you can also message me on Slack and we can schedule a time to meet.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay. So let me show you, Rainmaker, I'll show you that what the billing looks like that Wahab was just mentioning. Where did it go? So this is the email that I got from AWS this week. And you can see this is a billing alarm I have in my account that I've set a $10 limit for that. When my account reached $10, they should just send me a message. And this is the message. So you can see my alarm that I set for a $10 limit. And right now, as of the time they sent me this message, my charge for this month is already at $12. And I can log into the console, and I can log into the console and just review, go to my billing and just review the billing and see what resource there I left running that is running my bill up. Then you can either stop that resource or delete it, whatever you want to do. So that's a good point what I've made. Setting the alarm would help you. Okay. Does anyone else have any question? I haven't started. I started kind of like working on the Azure stuff, but I haven't really focused on it a lot. The next one I want to the next project I want to do on that is just working on that the static website. I always like to start any project on any platform with that static website project, because that was the same project I did to start my AWS career. That was the very first hands-on project I did. So that's the same thing we'll do in Azure. We'll start just by deploying the static website project. Then once we do that, we'll add a dynamic project to it. So hello, Alex, how are you? So I haven't started working on it. So the first thing is just creating the VPC. But I want us to start with just creating the VPC with the same way we created it in AWS, with multi-AZ VPC with public and private subnets, and setting up whatever necessary route tables. And I'm not sure what these things are called in Azure. Setting up these things in it. Then once we do that, we can deploy a server in it, host our website on that server, and test whether we are able to access our website. I think once we do that, that will just open the door for all the other projects. And at this point, it's just reverse engineering and recreating the projects we completed in AWS in Azure. And once you've done that, I really feel like that gives you a good, solid foundational knowledge on Azure. Then, as you guys know, once you get the solid foundational knowledge on Azure, and now some of you have that on AWS, there is always continuous learning. There's always continuous learning aspect to being a cloud engineer. You don't stop learning. Even I know Terraform, there's still a couple of things, many things I can learn with Terraform. So there's always continuous learning aspect to it. So a lot of the things I'm showing you guys, I'm teaching you is just to get a good solid foundation knowledge, because that you will be relying on that a lot throughout your cloud journey. Wahab, go ahead. I see that you want to say something.
No, I was gonna ask you, what Linux OS are you using? Because there's no Amazon Linux 2 or 2023 in Azure, right?
Oh, no,
Do
no.
we
So we would use whatever Azure has. It wouldn't be called
whatever? Okay, okay, okay.
So that Linux 2023 or Linux 2, that is just specific name to
Amazon.
AWS.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe like, would we use Ubuntu? Would we use Fedora? Like, I don't know if you've already
No,
done a research on that.
Azure has their own Linux server too.
So, so they have their own like proprietary Linux server, like
Yeah.
Azure. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they
I
have
didn't know
Linux.
that.
So
Let
you
me try.
can host Linux server on Azure, just like how in AWS we have Linux, we have Windows server too. Our EC2, we can launch it in Windows.
Yeah,
We just don't use it, right? Because most of the servers at work is launched in Linux. So we mainly focus on Linux. So just
yeah.
like if we go in the console, I wish I was logged into my console now. Let me try to log in. Just like if we go in the console, we can launch a Linux server, and we can also launch a Windows server.
Yeah.
In Azure, it's the same way too. You can, let me share my screen. In Azure, instances are called virtual
Virtual
machines.
machines, yeah,
At least
VMs.
I know that little from so pricing. Let's see. Virtual machine instances.
So these are the reserved ones now. So I think we can
Oh,
go
you
back
can
to on
see
demand.
Linux pricing
Yeah.
details.
Yeah, what I was looking for is what's OS of Linux. So okay, so we can
So
see the
you can
OS there. So
see
there's
right here,
Ubuntu.
there's Ubuntu,
So
there's Red Hat. There's just pretty much the same way the same ones we have in
AWS, but without
AWS. Yeah,
Amazon Linux, right? Yeah.
yeah. So I see what you're saying.
Mm,
They're competing with each other. I don't think
they won't have, but the thing is,
they will
but
let you run Amazon Linux. But Amazon Linux is just
they
a
have
name
they
AWS
have
is
the
calling
Windows
it.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the Windows one. Yeah.
Yeah, so right, Amazon Linux is just what they are calling it, but it is using, I think the Linux too was using Red Hat, right?
Yeah,
On
you
the
had a bit of Red Hat. Yeah.
yeah, under the hood, right?
Mm.
Um, so once we know that, we just have to pick which one we want to use here, right?
Yeah,
So we
because
can
if
probably
we're
just
gonna
use the
use
Red Hat
yeah,
Linux, and we should be good. And if you
yeah,
guys want to use any other one like the Ubuntu, I know we didn't do a lot with Ubuntu in AWS. So if you guys prefer to just use Ubuntu, so that way you guys are exposed to running some Ubuntu commands and just deploying your application using Ubuntu server, we can use Ubuntu. So I can see us using any of these three.
which one? Ubuntu,
Ubuntu Linux,
Enterprise,
Red Hat,
Linux.
Enterprise Linux, and maybe the
Can
Red
we
Hat
would
Linux.
Red Hat Enterprise Linux most likely will be expensive because they have like maybe that will come with support.
Okay,
Let
so
me see.
let's see. because and I'm still, where do I get to? Let's see. I don't want to leave this page, but let's see where their free pricing, free thing is. That I feel like that would tell you
Which one?
exactly which servers, because whatever server they let you use for free, that will probably, I'm assuming that will be equivalent to our AWS on Linux 2 or Linux 2023. So try Azure for free. Okay, right here. Free Azure account, you get up to $200 a month. Oh, okay, right.
And they have always free.
Right here. You can see their virtual machine. Azure virtual machines. They let you run.
Each of B1.
So right here. See, they have Azure virtual machine Linux. And it's selling you this one, ARM-based, the one that are ARM-based. That has this specification. You can run those for free. So you can run the Windows one. They let you run the Windows one and the Linux one. Which, let me just copy this.
They have free load balancers.
Free.
AWS doesn't have that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they have free load balancers.
So it says, I really don't understand right now where this falls under the I think is, you know how in AWS it doesn't matter which one. It doesn't matter whether you are using what the distro is not really what AWS looks at, but the instance type you are using. So
yeah,
I think whether you are using this whether you are using any of this, I don't think that will matter as much, and I'm not sure. But rather general purpose, let's just even try, see. General purpose VM. See, this is what will matter, like the VM series. So here it is saying that each of the B1S, let me see if this is available in here. Where was I? Yeah, you can see. Let's see. There's not the B1S is not here. So maybe that was like a old one, or B2 PTS. So I'm not necessarily sure how to pick all these things. Yeah. But
maybe it's not in the savings plans.
It's probably, let me try all, maybe on that all. Let's see. So I think this is where this VM series, this is where we have to find which ones are free and which ones are not. So I'm assuming this will be equivalent to instance type in AWS.
Yep.
Yeah, so once we start, we'll figure all that stuff out. So here they even have the pricing here. From what I heard, Azure is expensive. Probably more expensive than AWS. I mean, those of you guys that have experience in Azure, let me know how true that is. Right, so you can see the pay as you go. This one will cost you $6 a month. And yep. So we just have to find BSP series 2. Oh, this is the latest generation. So maybe whatever this is saying here, they just haven't updated this documentation. I'm not sure. Because this BSP 2 is the latest generation. And if I look at, oh, I'm on Ubuntu. Let me see if I try something else. Maybe we'll see that. BS series. There you go. BS series. Okay. So I think maybe when you are launching your instance, right? Oh, there you go. So BS series, right? You can see the BS ones.
Yeah, three per month pay as you go.
Yeah. So, but there's, according to their documentation, if you just open your account, they let you run this for free.
For free for, I think,
For
12
months or
Yeah.
up to you exhaust your $200 limit. Then they'll start charging you $3 a month. So you guys can see that it is still very cheap. If you complete your project in a couple of, I'm not advocating rushing your project, but if we use this instance type and we complete our project within a month, and even within that month, you can stop your instance and start it, because I'm sure in AWS, they'll have that feature. I mean, in Azure, they'll have that feature to stop and start. You should be fine. Yeah. So it's a good documentation. I think it is Azure Microsoft pricing. I'm going to bookmark this so I can reference it later. Okay. Well, thank you, Titus, for the link. Okay. Does anyone else have any question? All right. You guys, I will continue working on this Azure stuff, and I will let you guys know when we are ready to build our VPC and just deploy a server in it and host our website on it. So most likely in the coming weeks, we'll be working on that. For those of you guys that joined earlier in the end, when I started today's meeting, I said that I may not be here next week. I may not be able to attend the meeting next week, but I'll see. Due to just the delivery of my child can be any time from now. So if that happens this week, then most likely next Saturday, I won't be here. I won't be able to attend the meeting. But if any of you is interested in running the meeting for next Saturday, so that's one thing I realized, that we don't have to, if I'm not available, we don't have to take off. Some of you guys can still, you can attend, discuss as a group, run the meeting. You know, as a matter of fact, at work, they started making us, they fired the Scrum Masters long time ago. You guys know when all that tech layoff was happening, some of the first people they laid off at our company is the Scrum Master. I'm talking about last March. We haven't had a Scrum Master since last March. They fired all the Scrum Masters. Now they're making us run the meeting. So for every sprint, the engineers have to run the meeting. We are rotating it. Someone else is running the meeting for 2 weeks in this sprint. So it's because our sprint is 2 weeks. Then most likely in the coming sprint, another engineer would run the meeting. So I think I'm next in running the meeting. So I will have to run the meeting for 2 weeks. So that means every daily stand-up, sharing the board, going through everybody's update, backlog grooming, or whatever other things. You'll pretty much be running that entire thing for 2 weeks. So again, when you guys are working on hands-on project, part of the things you have to get comfortable with is just the ability, just being able to share your screen, you know, knowing how to navigate to wherever you want to navigate to. Because my coworker was sharing our screen the other day where we had our meeting. I think our director was on the, I think that's his title. It's pretty much in our department, he's pretty much the head there. My manager and my lead reports to him. It's like 3 people that reports to him. He was on the meeting, and my lead was sharing our screen, and she can't find it, the form she was trying to, the document she was trying to show. And he commented on that. He was like, I expect when you guys are sharing the screen, that your document and everything should be ready. So, because I guess he was kind of annoyed that we're going back and forth when you were sharing the screen to just even look for the documentation of what she was trying to explain. So when you are sharing your screen, the first time I had to share my screen to it was nerve-wracking, but I'm used to it at this point. So when you are working on your hands-on project, this is also part of the learning experience. So getting comfortable with sharing your screen, discussing what you are trying to share or whatever questions you have. These are things you guys should not underestimate. So when you are here, any opportunity you have to share your screen, go through your work, explain it. It would only help you because all these things you'll be doing on a day-to-day or weekly basis at work. I don't think there's a day that I've had a meeting, whether it's like a technical meeting, doing something with someone that either I or somebody else is not sharing their screen. So something you guys should get used to. So if any of you wants to run the meeting next week, let me know. We can work on that. But I also keep you guys posted. I'll keep you guys posted if anything change. So do you guys have any question? If not, we can end today's meeting here. Okay. All right then.
AZ, I do have a question.
Sure.
Me and Wahab, we was
Sure.
working on my my project,
Mhm.
and for some reason my VS Code kept timing on out. What's the recommend where I should look? Now I done looked into my security group for the Kubernetes project. I looked into me and WhatsApp, we configured that I had it under Dylan 1, but I went back and I changed it because it still timed me out again. And right now I'm like, I have real bad internet service and I'm in a hotel. And right now it looked like it deleted all my resources from AWS. But when I refreshed it and everything, I still had my resources and I'll still be able to see my VPCs and all that kind of good stuff. And
Yeah.
I couldn't finish my project, but I still have my reset my instance going, and I still have my resources running. Now, I remember when you said you gotta, just stop everything for us, my internet gateways and that kind of good stuff. But I have not finished my project, and I can't, for some reason, I can't finish it, and I want to finish it on VS Code to run everything from what me and WhatsApp was doing. And I'm just running into problems for us right now. And I don't want you to give me the answers. I just want you to point me in like the directions where I can figure it out myself.
Okay. So usually if you are having timeout issue, what are you trying to do that is giving you the timeout? Are you trying to SSH into something and it is timing out? What exactly are you trying to do?
All right, I'm gonna share my screen and maybe we can see it, but I don't want to my internet is real slow.
Sure.
So all right. Now all this is configured correctly. When I got to right here, I believe it timed me on out.
Okay. So that is I think that is how you connect your Kubernetes CLI to your current cluster. So that way it picks up your cluster. So that seemed to work. Oh no,
Yeah.
you just run it. You just running the
I just ran it.
the
Yeah.
environment
It
variable.
was one of these. Yeah, it was one of these where it kept yeah. See,
You've already created
You
the
already
namespace
created the
already.
namespace, right?
right, right.
So a namespace, it's been a while since I worked. So a namespace is just something that is specific to the project you are working on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've already created that namespace in there and you're trying to create another, it's like naming a file or something and you're trying to
Right.
create another name for this same exact name for the file. That's what it will give you. So if you've already created a namespace, it would tell you that, but so and all these things you
Everything
can
seems to be working. It is working fine.
It,
Yeah.
it's working, but I ran all these environment variables, and when I got to right here,
Where?
it didn't do it didn't do what it's supposed to do. It
Okay.
just it timed me
Let's see.
out. I'm trying to get to it to where it told me the TCP. I can't remember it for its right offhand, but it did time me on out.
Run it. Let's see. Run it. Let's see. Just enter and let's see what it says.
Because me and we was trying to figure
Yeah.
this on
So
out.
cluster must be set. So you have to.
But what we did was um when I ran when I got to the chocolate and I ran everything that I needed to run, it gave me this error code and it was referenced to Dylan 1. Now when I went back into my AWS, it it didn't it picked up another project, Jupiter. It picked up Jupiter and it didn't let me finish what I wanted to finish. I can't I can't really explain it because the internet where I'm at, I would already have this already open and for you to see, but the clusters must be set. But it was mostly like this. But if you have time, what's happening? I know as Z, you got to go and you ain't gonna be on next week. But I would love to pick what's happening, brain about this. And I know I should have been doing this a couple days ago, but
no, it's fine. So scroll up in this file you have. So the important thing in this file is that a lot of the things we set, these commands, you have to run them in the order that we have them. So you can't make sure when you are running each of the commands, make sure those commands are executing successfully before you move on to the next. And how I have the commands in the code block, make sure you are running each block one at a time. And the main thing is making sure everything is set, right? So there isn't anything you have to configure here that it would time you out because everything here is connecting through CLI. So as long as your CLI is configured, so what happens if you guys have time to look at it, some of the things I'll look at is just configuring his default profile on CLI, right?
Yeah. So
Making
we
sure
did
that
that.
credentials is
Yeah.
there.
We did that. So we fixed it. But from what I can
But
see now, it's the cluster that's not set. So can you run line 88 again? Run line 88. So copy and paste line 88, run it, and then run this command one more time.
okay.
No, you're already authenticated. Yeah, like your AWS, you're connected to AWS already.
Yes, just click on the screen, click out of where you are dealing. Or press click the X thing, it should close that, the X stuff in the upper right hand side. No, not there, but that one. In that, yeah. So scroll up.
No, let's try and do one by
run
one.
that one. Yeah.
Do you want? Okay, yeah,
It
run
can
it
run.
as a
It can
whole.
run those environment variable. It will work fine.
See, I was trying to get back to where we was, where I seen the issue at.
Okay.
That's the reason why I was I know you're supposed to do it in order, but I was trying to hurry up and get to where my problem was.
Yes.
And I know
yeah, when you are showing where the problem is, you can. It was confusing for me when you were running the commands like skipping them, because some of those commands you can even, because they are installing certain things on your on your command line, getting ready to connect to your cluster to deploy your deploy things in your cluster. And if some of that command, you only have to run it once. If you run it multiple times, it will also throw an error. So you have to also keep track of what you've already run and where you are having the issue.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I started noticing that it kept saying when I was running into my area, it kept saying it's already exist. But I'm not connected to my my AWS Pro default. That's a whole ball game, because my my IP has changed, because I am in a different state for us right now. So I'm using my my phone IP address for us right now, and I know it's not configured, but
Yes.
that's the reason
And that
why.
could also be an issue where you are getting the stuff from. But I don't think, and Wahab, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you should be having any type of
authentication issue.
issue.
So what's probably happening
with the
here
security group.
Yeah, what's happening here is there are two profiles configured on a CLI. There's a profile called default. There's a profile Dylan1, right?
Right.
When we worked, I wanted to make sure that, whatever profile you have as an admin user, let's try and keep it consistent, because it's kind of similar to the same issue we had last week where we had a user configured in the CLI, but then we noticed that the username and the secret key and access key were incorrect. From what I can see here is the user that's probably logged into your CLI is Dylan1, but you're also trying to authenticate using AWS profile, and that's why you're getting this error. So if you close this and run that AWS STS configure, which is similar to a WMI, it's going to tell you you're Dylan1, but you're also trying to authenticate using your default profile, right? So that's what's causing the authentication issues.
But when I ran the Dylan1, it shot me back when I ran Dylan1 and I went back into my AWS, it's supposed to create my resources. It was creating my resources into a Jupyter, into another, not into the CLI that I wanted. I wanted it into the cloud project one, because that's why I have everything configured where it can go down in SQL, and where it can line everything on up. And I didn't want it to go to Dylan1, but we couldn't configure it because my task manager, and I had so much stuff running in the background, and I had to delete all that because it was running slow. And that's why when we started running this command, it didn't give us what we needed, but I fixed that.
All right. So the way, because at the end of the project, did I run any? We don't have to run anything to delete whatever you already configured, right? So I think if you delete your cluster, and is there anything I ran at the end when we were cleaning up to clean up the CLI part? I don't think there is.
CLI to delete the cluster? Yeah.
No, I mean when we delete the cluster, right? I'll check again. So you might just have to delete your cluster, right? And just start everything over again in terms of from deleting your cluster, running your command here, but everything should work exactly how it's supposed to work. So the main thing is when you run this command, run them for each of your cluster, right? You only have to run this command we are running here one time.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but see, but the problem that we ran into, it was this right here, this Helm report. But I had so much stuff running in the background, I had to delete all of it on my task manager, and it was slowing down my computer. But when I deleted it, it ran perfect. It showed everything. But how I got to it, I went to my PowerShell, and I knew it was there in my PowerShell, but it wouldn't read in my VS Code.
because I had so much other stuff running, my apps running at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Yeah. One thing I'd say is though, I know like a lot of issues that we tend to, I mean, I used to have those issues as well, but I really, really dug deep into it just to make sure, like, because I noticed that a lot of issues tend to be like access key, secret access key, using the wrong user and things like that. That AWS STS configure command, it's out again before anyone starts on the project. I'll recommend to run it once, just so at least you know what user you are logged into with the CLI. Because sometimes it gets confusing when we've already set a user in the CLI, because we really don't know what the username and password is anymore, because it's a one-time thing. And if you don't download it, it's kind of lost, right? You have to pretty much go and create a new access key, right? And I think this what you're clicking on, this AWS profile default, is probably another issue because you can see it's saying click to change. You're changing the profile, right? But most likely that's another thing that's causing issues. Maybe this default profile no longer exists, or the access key for this default profile has changed on your console, but it hasn't been updated in your CLI, right?
Right.
So
But my thing is the only reason why I'm getting this output because I change states and I'm using a different IP address. I'm using my phone
no,
IP
no,
address.
that shouldn't be
that's not it's not going to affect it. So the next time I meet with you guys, I've covered this, and in the past, Dylan, you probably weren't here, and I think it's something I'll make a video on. I've actually been thinking about making a video on it, and I'll make a video on it, right? You have to understand. So there are two ways we are connecting to resources in AWS. One is if we are using CLI, and the other way, well, it's not even we are connecting to stuff. So understand the difference between connecting into a resource and creating a resource, right? So if we are, let's say we want to connect into our EC2 instance, right? We can use things like PuTTY, our PowerShell, and with that we have to set the IP address correctly to connect to the EC2 instance. So let's say you are connecting to an EC2 instance, that's when you need to set your IP. But CLI, if you are trying to create something in AWS, like let's say you are trying to create an EC2 instance in AWS, right? Or we are creating a repository, S3 bucket, or you want to see what resource you've created in your AWS, that we are using CLI. That use a different authentication method. It has nothing to do with your IP. With that one, you only have to focus on setting your credentials, which is your access key and secret access key. That's what Wahab is saying.
Right.
Wahab, you can explain. Maybe I'm explaining it.
no,
And I take
yeah.
from.
Can you run the command I
You,
put in
you
the chat?
explaining it right. You explaining it right. But when me and WhatsApp did it, it was referenced to for as my secret access key and all that to Dylan 1. But on a project, I didn't want it to go to Dylan 1. I wanted to go to the cloud project.
So
Yeah.
you have to. Okay. Let me. So let me share my screen and I'll show you something real quick. And I have to probably just give me a second. I'm going to make a video on this because I see a lot of people have issues in this area and understanding it. But I'm also saying that before you guys start any type of CLI project, like the Terraform project and just any type of CLI project, this is the first thing you guys have to understand. Just a second.
But AZ, what I was saying was like when we start the like let's say how when you finish a project and we go into a different project, you do like you configure the whole CLI and everything all over again. And I already be having the CLI already configured and I already have those different settings for it, and I'll be doing it all over again. And that's where I think that's where my mistake is. My mistake
I
at.
see. I see. So that is also fine. Wait, remember where you went, and that is fine. That is why when we are working on the project, I'm trying to make each project as independent as I can. So you guys, because if someone didn't watch the other project and I configured a CLI on it, right? And I'm doing it in this other project, it will make sense to them. So every project is different, right? But we'll talk about it now. Let me just even find one of my AWS account to log in.
And you said for as my project that I'm working on for the Kubernetes, you saying I should just delete my cluster and start a whole new cluster all over again, right?
Yeah,
That's with the route table.
I think all you have to do is just delete the cluster.
All right, cool. Thank you. Because I did not want to delete my subnets and all that kind of stuff.
You don't have to delete your VPC. You don't have to delete your VPC. You can just delete everything you did up to the section where we are starting our Kubernetes cluster. Whatever you've done in that Kubernetes cluster, delete it and start that again.
Okay, all right, cool. And run everything that's in my script. I got it.
No, the Kubernetes project, when I was working on it, it took me some time to figure it out. But this is what I want to share. So one thing I'm saying is for those of you that have done the Terraform project, if you've completed the Terraform project, the Docker project, by the time you are on any advanced project, this is something you must understand. This is almost like if you've completed those projects, it is the prerequisite to working on any other project. You don't, and I'm saying this with due respect, don't say you've completed a project and one of the basic things you are supposed to understand about that project, you don't understand. Because sometimes when they are interviewing you, they really don't ask us deep questions when they are interviewing us. They only ask us like basic questions, right? So, and how you answer those basic questions will let them know whether you understand what you are talking about or not. So you guys make sure you have all the basics down. So can you guys see my screen? I think I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So when we talk about the CLI, and you know how I can log into the management console here. We log in with our username and password, and we come here, we can create an EC2 instance if I go into the EC2 service, right? This is one way you can create resources in AWS. You understand that, right?
Yep.
The other way we can create resources in AWS is we can create the resource right from our computer without logging into our EC2 without logging into our management console. We can run what we call AWS CLI command from our computer here, and that will create whatever command we run. For anything you are trying to create, there is a specific command for it. So let's say if I want to create an EC2 instance, there is a CLI command that I will run from my PowerShell that will create the EC2 instance in my AWS account, right? But the thing is, before you run any command, right, you just don't have access to start typing things on your computer to start creating resources in your AWS account. Before you can create resources in your AWS account, you have to first authenticate. The same way, before you can create any resource in your management console, you have to first put in your username and password. It's the same concept as your computer. Before you start creating resource in your AWS account using your CLI, you have to first authenticate, right? And that is where we have to, and how you authenticate if you want to create resource using the AWS CLI is, first, you have to create a user that has the ability to authenticate, right? So you have to create a user that has the you have to create a user that has the credentials to authenticate. And similar to how you use a username and password to log into the console, for CLI, the username and password is always the access key and secret access key. So the first thing we are going to do here is we are going to create a user. So we'll go to IAM. And I'm going to select users here. I'm going to create a user. I'll call this user test. And do I want to give the user access to the management console? Because we are using this user to create resource from our computer, we don't have to give them access to the management console. We'll click next. Here, I'm going to attach a policy to this user, and I'll give this user administrator access. So all this is just creating the user for now. I'll click next. Then on this page, you can see I'm creating a user called test, and I'm giving the user administrator access, and I'm just going to create the user. So
sorry to jump in. Can we create two users? Can we
Okay.
create two users like test here? Can we create test two as well?
Okay, sure. So I'll create another user, test two. All right, so I've created two users, test and test two, right? So once you've created your user, you can select your user, and how you give this user access to be able to create resources from your computer is, remember, the credentials that user need is an access key, a secret access key. So once you create the user, you select the user, then you come to the security credentials tab, right? If you scroll down here, this is where you create the access key and secret access key, which is equivalent to the username and password if you were connecting using the management console. But just think of the access key and secret access key as the username and password. So here we are going to create an access key for this user. I'm going to select command line interface because that's what we want to use the user to run. I'm going to accept this and click next. Then here, I'm not going to create a description. I'm just going to create the access key. So I have configured this access key. I've created this access key for the user that I just created test. The thing about this page is you only see this access key. The thing about this page is you only see this secret access key once. Once you click away, AWS will not show you the secret access key anymore. So if you want to save it, you can either click this box to save the access key or secret access key on your computer, or you can click download CSV file, which will download the CSV file on your computer. So I'm going to click download CSV file. Yes, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I didn't know you were gonna download. I thought you were gonna. I was gonna say you should download it, but it's fine. You did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can download the CSV file. Once you download the CSV file, you can now close this. I'm going to do the same thing for the other user. So I go back to my users and select test two. Remember to create your credentials to allow this user to run CLI command. You select the security credentials tab. You come to access key, create access key, command line, acknowledge here, and next, and just create it. And again, you get the access key and secret access key. And here, you click, oh no, before I click done, cancel. Download the CSV and click done. So that's the thing. Because I created my, oh, okay, it is showing me down here because I was about to say, where's the name? All right, I'm going to click done. So I have two users, and the users both have the credentials that I can use to authenticate. So I can create resources in AWS, right? So there's one thing I want you guys, and I feel like this is where those that are still new and are learning, this is where you guys kind of like get confused a little bit. So Dylan, at the basic, remember, all we've done so far is just create a user, and we generated an access key and secret access key for that user, right? So one thing I want you,
definitely understand that.
Okay, cool. So one thing I want you guys to understand anytime you are having authentication issue is that, and we'll talk about that, but I want you guys to think about this. So there is default, and there is also named, I'll call it named profile, right? So there is default and there is named profile. So I want you to just keep this in mind. So now that we have created our user with access key and secret access key, the next thing you have to do is configure those users' credentials on your computer, right? So all you have to do is, before I do that, let me delete. I will explain it, then we'll walk through it together. So once you have created your user with access key and secret access key, the next thing you have to do is configure that user's credentials on your computer. When you configure a user's credential on your computer, whether you are using a Windows computer or a Mac computer, that credential is going to be stored in the home directory on your computer. So remember, home directory. The home directory on your Windows computer or your Mac computer is by default, if you didn't change anything on your computer, but it's 99.9% of the time, it is the same way. So you don't have to do anything. The home directory on your Windows computer or your Mac computer is the directory that your PowerShell or your Mac terminal opens to. So if I open PowerShell on my computer, whatever directory your PowerShell is opening to, you can see my PowerShell is opening to this directory. This is the home directory on my computer. Similar, if you are working on Mac, whatever directory you see here on Mac, that is your home directory on your computer. So you can see this is telling me that my home directory is C. So if I open the File Explorer here and I select the C drive, you can see C, and it is telling me in the C, there is a folder called users. If I select the users folder there, then in the users folder, there's a folder called admin. If I select here, this is the home directory on my computer. So what I'm saying is, when we configure our AWS CLI, all AWS is doing is it is storing that access key and secret access key in the home directory on your computer. And you can see now I'm in the home directory. AWS, when you configure that credentials, AWS will store it in a .aws folder. You can see in my home directory, there is a .aws folder. I'm just going to delete this folder just to show you something. I'll delete that folder. So I no longer have the .aws folder in the home directory on my computer. So I want you guys to, another key thing I want you to understand, the home directory on your computer. Okay, so now let's configure our user's access key. So I'll start with the first user, test. So you can see this is the user down here, test. This is the access key and secret access key of this user. So here I'm going to open PowerShell, and the command I'm going to run to configure the user's credential is this. And then, so yeah. The command I'm going to use to run the user's credential is this. But before I run that command, again, I want you to also pay attention to what we mean by default profile and what we mean by a named profile. So if you want to configure a default profile, right, you are going to open your PowerShell on your Windows computer and your Mac terminal. And the command is AWS configure. Go. Once you type AWS configure, you press enter. AWS is going to ask you for the access key ID, right? You come to your CSV file, copy the access key, and you paste it here. Then it is going to ask you for the secret access key. You come to your CSV file, copy the secret access key, and paste it here. Press enter. It is going to ask you for the region. The region we will use is US East 1, because that's the one we've been using. So US East 1. Press enter. And for the default output, you don't have to do anything. So maybe I should put it side by side so you guys can see. Remember, the home directory on my computer is showing me where the home directory is here, right? Meaning that when I configure this credential, it is going to store it in this directory on my computer. So if I go back to, remember, it is C drive, going to select C drive, users, admin. And you can see here, I don't have any .aws folder here. I'm going to put this side by side so you can see. Now watch what happens in here when I press enter here. So I'm going to press enter here. You can see that it created the .aws folder. So the first thing I want you guys to understand is the act of running AWS configure, all that is doing is it is creating a .aws folder on your home directory. And in that folder, it will create a config file and credentials file. This is how AWS said your file needs to be organized in the home directory on your computer to be able to authenticate. If we open the config file, I'm going to right click on it and select open with, and I'll open it with Notepad. It is opening on the other screen, right? In your config file, you will see default, which is equivalent to what I said here, default. So you'll see default, you'll see the region you configured for it. And if you open the credentials file, in the credentials file, you will see the default again. And you'll see the access key and secret access key. So what I'm saying is the act of running AWS configure, all it is doing is it is creating these two files in the .aws folder in your home directory, and it is storing your credentials in it. If you don't want to run AWS configure, you can create this .aws folder in the home directory yourself and create these two files yourself. But I don't recommend doing it that way, because if you choose to go this route, you have to make sure that you enter the information in these two files the same exact way I just showed you. In your config file, you have to enter it in this format. And in your credentials file, you have to enter it in this format for it to work exactly. So to save yourself the hassle, just run the AWS configure, put your access key and secret access key, and let AWS create it for you. So what does this default profile do? So when we have this default profile we just configured, right? This default profile means that when I am running my AWS CLI command to create a resource in my AWS account, AWS will automatically use this default profile. That is what the default means. So anytime you see a default in your .aws folder. So if you guys are having any type of credentials issue, I want you to just come to your home directory, look at what CLI you've configured. So here, if I do open with, right? If you see a default in there, this default means that you ran AWS configure and it created default. And this means that if I run any CLI command, it is going to use this profile. So if I come to my terminal now and I say AWS S3 ls and press enter. See, this CLI command is listing all the S3 buckets in my account. And this command I just ran is using the default profile I configured. Do you understand that, Dylan? Okay. So I'm not sure if Dylan is still here, but because I know he said he was having internet problem. But basically, when you guys configured your CLI command, right? If you see a default profile in there, this means that anytime you run a CLI command, whatever account this credentials for this default profile is in, remember the credentials is in the credentials file. Whatever account that credential is in, that is the account AWS is going to authenticate to and create whatever CLI command you are running. So now let's talk about the other way. The other one is named profile. So this is where you are getting confused, Dylan.
Sorry, Aziz, can I just quickly, can we run that AWS SDS get call identity? And what this command does is it lets you know what user is currently logged into your CLI, and it lets you know what account. So for example, if you're working with multiple accounts and you're working with multiple users, let's say you have 3, 4, 5 users, sometimes it's hard to tell what access key is set to the user in the console. But if you run this command, it would let you know what user is currently logged in, and what user is logged in and what account you're logged into.
Question. So can you like say when you create a IAM user and yeah, like what you did, you have test 1, test 2. Can you use login using one CLI but access both user credential, or just that credential is just for that user?
Can you reframe your question again? Sorry. So are you saying that if I go ahead?
Yeah, you had 2 users that you created, test 1 and test 2. So the credential that you where you download, it's only for one. You cannot access the next user, don't with it.
Yes. No, the next user, the credentials that is configured on my computer right now,
yeah,
is only for that test user.
One.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So yeah, it makes sense, because then if you're doing something and you're trying to access, you're running the wrong configuration, then you wouldn't get through. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So this command, what I've said, right? If you run this command, it is showing you the IAM user in your account, in the account that IAM user is in. So, and remember, there's kind of like, I need to map it out so I can explain it better, right? So, but there's something I want to get into, the difference between, so what I want to explain to you guys is the difference between a default profile and a named profile. So I've configured a default profile on my computer, right? And by default, if I run any AWS CLI command, like I did here, it is going to use the credentials in that default profile. That will always be the case. So now let's configure that test 2 user on your account. So let's say the test 1 user, the test user I create is in one account and the test 2 is in another account. And you're saying, I want to configure this test 2 user on my account so that I can authenticate to that account for that test2 user.
Yes.
So again, you come back to your PowerShell. If you run AWS, well, you run AWS configure. But one thing I want to explain here is if you run AWS configure and press enter, whatever access key and secret access key you enter is going to override whatever the default profile you configured already. Because remember, running AWS configure, pressing enter, entering your access key and secret access key is creating the default profile. You can only have one default profile. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
You can only have one default user.
Yes, you can only have one default user.
Default user. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're gonna override that old default user
Definitely
and put it
understand
new credential.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can
Makes
only
sense.
have one default user. So if you run AWS configure again, and you now put the access key for this test2 user in here, it is going to override the test1 you configured. So now your CLI will be authenticating to wherever test2 user is.
Yeah.
All right. But
and that's what I was saying for the cloud project. That's what I was saying. I had Dylan 1, but when I configure it and I put it toward the cloud project user, it override everything and it went to the cloud project user.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So this is what I want to explain. So if you have multiple user, whether it's 20 user you have or let's just stick to the basics like 2 users, right? It doesn't matter how many users you have. If you want to now configure another user on your computer so you can use their credentials to authenticate, when you run AWS configure, you have to now specify -- profile, right? Then you give the profile a name. The name you give the profile is any name you want to call it. So what I like to do is I like to name the profile the same exact name of the IAM user. So that way, when I'm looking at it, I can tell which user in my AWS account that is. But you don't have to give it the name. The name here is just whatever profile name, meaning that the default you guys see in that configured file, whatever name you enter here, that is what AWS will store the credentials as on your computer. But I like to match the name to the IAM user. So since the IAM user is called test2, I'm going to call this profile test2. So that way, when I'm looking at the file, I'm going to see that this is the user. So remember, now I'm running AWS configure and I'm now specifying -- profile and I'm giving the profile a name. This will now allow me to enter another configured profile in my credentials thing here. So watch, I'm going to press enter here. So when you run that, it is going to ask you for the access key, right? I'm going to get the test2 user. Remember, this is the test2 user here. I'm going to get the access key. Paste it here. And I'm going to, it is asking me for the secret access key. I'm going to get the secret access key. Paste it here. Track this out so you can see. Paste it here. And it is asking me for the default region. I'm going to enter US this one. And default output, I'm just going to leave that as empty. Right. So I've configured the test2 user. Now watch if I open my config file. You can see I have another profile called test2. The region I specify for that profile is US this one. Then if I go in the credentials file, you can see my default profile is here. The previous one I configured. Now you can see my test2 user is here. Right. So now you have 2 credentials on your computer, right? And I'll run what Wahab is saying here. This AWS STS get caller identity. But before I run that, remember I said now that if you want to configure an additional user, you have to specify -- profile. So you don't override your default one and specify the name. Then that will configure it so that you have multiple users configured. Now watch. If I run a CLI command, let's say I just run my CLI command again. I do AWS S3 ls. This is a CLI command. I press enter. Again, because I ran that CLI command, it would use the default profile. Where's the command I just ran, AWS S3 ls, would use the default profile, not this. So if you want to use this test2, let me clear my screen. If you want to use this test2 credentials that you configured on your CLI, you have to run the command like this, AWS S3 ls, and you have to specify the name of the profile you want to use. Remember, with the default, you don't have to specify anything. You just have to run AWS S3 ls, and it will use that default profile. But for any additional profile you configured, you have to specify that profile name. So if I want to use this test2, I have to now specify -- profile and the name of the profile. The name of the profile is test2. Now, if I press enter, you can see it is using that test2 credentials. That is the difference. So let's run the CLI command Wahab gave us. So I'm going to play the screen. So what's that command again? Let me.
STS get caller identity.
STS get. Right. So remember, this is a CLI command as well. Anytime you are running AWS CLI command, it always starts with AWS, then whatever CLI command you are running. In this CLI command, we are running the STS command to get the caller identity. Remember, we said that we have two credentials configured, a default one and a test one. If I run this AWS STS get caller identity, it is going to use the default one. So let me run it. You can see it is using the default one. That is why you are seeing here the test user, because the test user is the one we configured for the default one. If you want to use test2, remember, for any AWS CLI command, if you want to use the additional users you've configured, you have to run that same command, AWS STS get caller. I'm just going to press up, get caller identity. But if you want to use a different profile, you have to specify the name of that profile, which is -- profile.
Test2.
Test2. Then if I press enter, you can see that this is using this test2 credential, which is this. That is the difference. Does that make sense? Or is there anything I need to expand on?
Makes plenty of sense. I definitely understand that.
Okay. So it's something you guys should not forget. Anytime you're having credentials issue, go into the home directory on your computer. See what credentials you've configured there. Sometimes it could just be that the credentials you've configured has been a while. You've probably deleted from your AWS account. The first thing you want to make sure is verify that the credentials you've configured is in your AWS account. Once you verify that the credential is there, Then if you are seeing multiple credentials here, remember just running AWS CLI command without specifying a profile will always use the default that you've configured, right? But if you specify -- profile and specify the profile name, it would use any additional profile name you've configured here. So whatever you are seeing in your home directory file in the credentials thing as the profile name, that is what you can enter here. So if I'm seeing test2 here, I can run this CLI command and just put test1 and think it's going to work. It is not going to work.
And it only store these information in, and it will only create one .aws file in your home directory.
Exactly. It will only create one. If I delete that .aws file, if I delete this .aws folder, right? I'm just going to delete it, right? I've deleted. Watch. If I try to run my CLI command, it shouldn't work. It is not going to work, right? Okay. So if I run AWS configure again, I'm just going to run AWS configure. You can see here, I don't have the .aws. If I run AWS configure again, and I'm going to configure my credentials again for test user, I've added the access key. I'm going to add the secret access key. And I'm at the default region. US is 1. Press enter, and the default output, press enter. Watch. See, it created it. And now in this, I have the config and credentials, right? If I open the config, you can see it's a default profile because when I was configuring it, I didn't specify -- profile. I just ran AWS configure. And in the credentials file, you will see the default and the access key and secret access key. So now if I want to configure for another user, I'm going to run AWS configure. Remember, this is AWS configure. AWS configure -- profile and the name of the profile. I'll call it test2 because that's the name of the user. You press enter. It is going to ask you for your access key ID. Going to copy the access key ID here. Paste it here. Press enter. It's going to ask me for the secret access key. Going to copy the secret access key here. And paste it here. Press enter. Default region, US is 1. Press enter. Default output, press enter. So now if I come in my credentials, my config file, you can see I have 2 profiles now, the default one and the profile 2. So if I open the credentials, you can see the default and the test. And again, remember when you are running your CLI command, the difference between using the default and the difference between using test2. Remember, for your CLI command, the default, no, that's not the one. Remember, when you are running a CLI command, if you just run the AWS and the CLI command you want to run, that will always use the default profile. You can only have one of those, but you can have as many other profile name as you want, named profile. But if you want to use any other profile that is not a default, when you are running your CLI command, you have to specify the name of that profile, which you can see here. You have to specify the CLI command and the profile you want to use. So that is something about AWS CLI that I don't want you guys to forget and get confused. I think it is very basic, but also very confusing. It took me a while to understand it. So when you are running any type of CLI command, whether it's you are creating a repository, trying to create something, and it's giving you access denied or whatever, first thing I want you to do is go and check your home directory on your computer in that .aws folder, see the credentials you configured there, and make sure those access keys still exist in your AWS account. Then decide which one do you want to use in your project. If you want to use so Dylan, let's say in one project we created, let's say in one project we created, and I can configure as many named profile here just to show you. So let me configure another one, but I'll use the same access key. Let me see. So I do AWS figure -- profile. So let's say in one project you completed, that project was for Terraform, and I called it Terraform user. I press enter. It is going to ask me for the access key ID. I'm just going to post some random stuff here. Don't worry about it. Just let's pretend this is our access key ID. And for the secret access key, I put my secret access key. And press enter. And for the default region, I'll use US East 1. And the default output, I'm just going to press anything, right? So watch, if I open my credentials file, now I have another configured stuff, right? So what I'm saying is, let's say in project 1, this is the user you configure in project, and the next project, this is the user you configure. When you are running your CLI command, how you switch between those users is when you are running any of the CLI command, right? You have to now specify -- profile and the name of the profile you want to use. Does that make sense?
That makes plenty of sense. I mean, I definitely understand the CLI access key and secret access key and the profile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, but I just didn't know why when I was running it into my VS Code, it referenced Dylan 1 when I didn't want it to reference Dylan 1. I wanted to reference the Cloud Project 1 because that's why I have everything going to for us following step by step with
Exactly. So
with the project.
Exactly. And that is because when you run it in the first project, you just run AWS configure, right? And in the other project, when we configure the user's credentials, but when one of your credentials is probably configured under the default profile. So when you are running your CLI command, if you don't specify the profile name, it would always use the default one. That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I went, me and WhatsApp, we changed it, but it gave me a different output. It referenced to something in Jupyter, an old project. So what I did was I went back and changed it back to the Cloud Project 1, and that's why I didn't leave it. I was like, man, I don't want to mess anything on up, but I still got to go delete my cluster and do it all over again. But I was wondering, I know you're gonna be gone. I was wondering, if WhatsApp you have any time later, maybe we can work on and see where I'm going wrong at. Because I really don't think it's the CLI part I'm having trouble with. I really don't think so, but I could be wrong. But
yeah. So what I recommend is just delete the cluster. Delete the cluster, like delete the cluster. Follow us as a step to where it creates a cluster, and then at that point you can just send me a message in Slack, and I'll let you know and I'll respond. Yeah,
but I just want to let you know what's out. My internet is gonna be running slow, and I don't want it to run like super slow while we working on this. You know what I mean? You know, because I'm like out of state right now.
Yeah, so maybe
And
you can what you can do is you can delete the cluster when
Mhm.
you are in a place where like the internet is fine. Like I think it's fine, like you were able to
Right.
share your screen and do things. Then
Right. Mhm.
you can ping me, you can let me know. Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. If
Yeah.
anybody else wanna see what I'm going wrong, just shoot me a message on Slack, and you know I go through it, because every mistake that probably done been made, I'm pretty sure I done made it and
Yeah.
figured it on out. So if anybody want to work on it, I'm cool with it. I ain't doing no tripping.
So
Uh,
once you delete your cluster and you are you've cleaned up everything and you are ready to start back where that is. So let me see if I'm still logging, I can show you something what I mean.
I see.
So this is your account. Yes, sir.
Right, don't worry.
Um, so in this project, everything is kind of by section. So you've done your Docker, AWS infrastructure, creating Docker file, pushing it to ECR, migrating data into your RDS. This is where the Kubernetes stuff starts. So you need to so a lot of this stuff is just installing the software on your computer. So this
Right.
install
Mhm.
Kubernetes, this part, you don't have to worry about this. This is fine because you need those things on your computer. So
Right.
this is where everything you did after this point, you need to delete them. Then start all over
Well,
from
from
here. Yeah. So one thing you have to
start over
understand is,
from creating
yeah, start all over from creating this cluster. So anything you've done after here, which up to this point, you've probably only just created your cluster, delete it. Then you can create your cluster again, try to run your command. But when you are running your command, make sure you run it is from top to the bottom. Each one at a time, make sure each command executes successfully before you move on to the next one.
But I don't have to change my I don't have to change my route table. I don't have to change my internet gateway. I don't have to change none of that. Just create
No,
e
if you've
okay, all
configured
right,
all
cool,
that
cool.
stuff
Yeah.
correctly from the get-go, you don't have to change anything. So you are
All right,
this
cool,
project,
cool.
you are in this project, we are only did all this stuff we've done in the other projects. Like
Right,
that's
right.
one of
That's
the things I
100% right.
like about Kubernetes projects. All these things is like a combination of all the things we've done so far in all the projects all combined. So all this we've done, the only additional thing we are doing here is this Kubernetes cluster part. So if you are having issues on this Kubernetes cluster part, when I was working on this project too, I was deleting, starting over, try to pinpoint where I was having issues. So yes, this is where you have to delete everything too and start from here.
Okay, all right. Will do.
I'm one thing I'll say is Kubernetes is complicated. It is a lot of trial and error. So don't, I mean, when I did it as well, I kept on having to go back. It is a complicated project. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I did it like at least 2 times, and I still was coming up with the same code. So I don't mind doing it all over and over and over. And I just want to make sure that I understand it over and over. And once I do all of it and I get it to where I need to go, I still do it all over to make sure I got everything down pat. That's how I learn. So that's
Yeah,
just
I
me.
agree. But I've also say that since the Kubernetes project is almost like also in addition to that, also make sure that some of the prerequisite stuff that you are supposed to understand from everything leading to this point before the cluster, everything here, make sure that you have this down and solid.
Yeah,
Because
we
if
have
the
all
issue,
we have
if the issue is not, if the issue is Kubernetes, then we can focus on Kubernetes. But at this point in the Kubernetes project, there's the issue of your making sure your route table is set up and all that stuff. that you should have mastered at this point. So those are some of the prerequisites to working on the Kubernetes project.
Yeah, I definitely understand the route and the route table and all that.
All right, sure.
And inbound and outbound and which one you have what port you have open. That's why I have a different IP address, because I'm not at home. I'm somewhere else. And that's the reason why I think it's not letting me get into my AWS, my VPCs. So I definitely get that part. I can't wait to work on it once we finish this.
Okay.
Yeah, for the people that are just joining new and they are working on their project, sometimes I think it might do all of us a lot of favor if you just kind of like find time and then go to the videos like you on the Slack channel. You can just start watching some of those videos and just to get the basic and see how we did previously in the class and things like that. It helps because we did this already and I dropped that link for it. So maybe if you have time to just kind of like just look at some of those things, it will help.
Yeah. And if there's anything you want us to discuss while you are working on the project, when you are working on it, like some of this revisiting, configuring your credentials, security groups, or any of those basic things, let me know, and I'll do a demo on Saturday to start with, explaining it to you. But a lot of this stuff is trial and error too. Even at this level, the same thing still happens. If I'm working on a project, if things is not working exactly how I want it to, I always backtrack to see. So that the point of me even mentioning that, or some of these things you need to have them down, is because when you are having the issues, you can be 100% certain where the issue is coming from. You understand? Because if I've configured my VPC security group and everything correctly, I'm going to be 100% sure that the issue is coming from my cluster. And when I'm asking someone for help, I will tell them that, yes, I know everything else is configured. This is where I'm running into the issue. The point that I'm making with that is just and what Titus was saying is, it allows you, when you are troubleshooting stuff, to be able to pinpoint exactly where your issue is, so that when someone is helping you, you guys are maximizing the time to be able to resolve the issue. Because I always say it, and I keep saying it, unless if the person is your friend at work and you guys know each other very well, and someone you trust. If it is just any of your coworker you are pulling into a troubleshooting session, and some of the prerequisite things and the basic things you are supposed to know, you don't know, because from people working with you, they can tell how efficient you are, right? And they can tell what you know and what you don't know. Stuff like that will annoy them. I'm telling you, you will have friends at work, but sometimes, I don't want to say you don't have friends, but people get annoyed. They don't really want to help you like that. So all these things you guys are doing now is all going to help you in just understanding. Even when you're asking the questions, you have to understand that there's a difference between asking questions and the difference between asking the right question. You can be asking the same type of question, but the way you frame it is different. Like, for example, let's say you ask someone, like, how do I configure this access key? It's different from telling someone, I've configured my access key and I'm getting this error. I've looked over here, I've looked over there. Has anyone have this type of issue before? It's the same question, but how you phrase it, especially at work, matters. Because some people, they will look down on you, or they will feel like, oh, you should know that. So I'm just trying my best to tell you guys about this point to help prepare you. Because going in, you don't have to be an expert, but you have to have your basic foundational stuff down. So, yeah. But if you have any questions, if you guys need help, don't always hesitate to ask, you know. So, but like Wahab said, Kubernetes project is also very complicated. So once you remove all the cluster, maybe when you are running it, check if post something online and make sure you are at a place where you know your internet is good, where you are ready to work on it. So send a message online. If I'm online, I'll jump on and we'll run the commands together and see where you are having the issue. So
definitely. All right. Cool,
okay, cool.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
Aziz, can you take a look at it very quick?
Okay, sure.
This is where I'm having error now. This is,
So
can you see?
it is failing? Yeah, it is failing on the way to build your Docker image. Can you scroll up? And what about your CI/CD? Your project in your Visual Studio Code where you have your code.
Yeah.
Can you collapse IAC? Can you collapse
Yeah.
IAC?
That's what I was about to ask.
No. No, sorry.
No, in Visual Studio Code, minimize your IAC folder where your Terraform stuff is in.
Okay.
Also minimize that GitHub, that one too.
No, it's in your Visual Studio Code. So,
Are we doing anything with working directory? Can you scroll up in the code? Because it can't find it. It probably can't find the Docker file.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
So
Build Docker image.
okay. Can I recommend something? Under steps, can we run can we add a new step? And what that step is, again, it's just to debug. Can we run ls, an ls command? So at least it lists the file. It's gonna run a command, list the files. It will print it in the what's it called? In the console. No, not here. No, we don't have to do it here.
No, let me
So line
see.
2, 3. So under line 233, just type enter or something.
Yeah.
But his job is not even running, so it's not
The
going
job is
to.
not running.
No. So
No, sorry. Can you go back to the console to
yeah, because
GitHub?
I think the job is not even starting.
Does he check? No, he checks out and he logs into ECR, right? Yeah. So it logs into
Oh, okay.
ECR.
Oh, it's the build part. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's the build path. So I think maybe it's not finding paths. That's the thing. I think it's unable to prepare context. So I think it's not finding the Docker file itself in order to build the Docker file.
Unable to just
Dash not found.
Should I check my Docker file in ECR?
No. So because we are
no,
building it from scratch, right? We are not it's not the one that's in its here. We are building it from scratch. So that Docker file needs to be in the what's it called? It needs to be in the runner in order to build it. Right. So I think again, I'm not 100% sure. I think it can find the Docker file. So maybe we are not checking out the right repository.
So let's even, I think the issue might probably be in his command.
Yes, it will run.
It's like so the Docker file is there. The issue would probably be in his code. Can I see your code again? So Wahab, you see over there where it will probably be somewhere where we are. Okay, scroll down. So Docker is somewhere in the Docker build, I think. Just wait over there. I'll make sure the Docker file. But in that job, can you go into your visuals in your GitHub Actions thing? I don't even think that job ran at all. I don't think that job ran. Can you scroll? Okay, log into ECR.
Can we click check out
Can you
repository?
check out repository? Yeah, let's see.
Say it again.
The checkout repository job up above one above the one that is failing.
Check it.
Click on that checkout ref yet. Switch to main. That's why I think the first thing we have to do is run a command where we confirm that it successfully checks out the repository and the files that have been checked out and just make sure that the Docker file is in that path. Because if you scroll down, you can see that it says cannot find, unable to prepare context. Path not found. So I have a feeling it's not finding. It might be checking it out, but it might be checking it out from into maybe the IAC folder, right? And the Docker file is not in the IAC folder. So if it's trying to build, this Docker image, then it cannot find the Docker file, right?
You
So
always said a working directory somewhere.
yeah, it says if you scroll up. So let me see. There's probably actions.
Let me even find it in Michael.
So can we go back to your let's try it again. This is just try and error. Can we go back to your VS Code? So I put a job in. So let's go to after log into ECR, then create a new job there. So this is going to be the fourth, no, so line 236. So go to line 236. Space dash name. Like let's create a new job. No, let's create a new job. So space like indent to indent. No, keep indenting. Indents. No.
Remove
No.
the
Remove
comment and
remove the comment here.
just press the tab key.
Press the tab key. Press the tab key. No, one back. Then dash name. Space name dash space name.
Yes.
No.
So you are
So
trying
dash
to
space.
you see the stuff under it. You are trying to create
Yeah,
that. It has
the
to
same
follow
thing.
that pattern.
Yes, that same pattern. Yes. So space, just type list files. Then enter. No. List files. Like just you can even just put list. We don't need file. Just put list.
So that is just a thing. It's not it's a
Coming up.
note. It's a comment. So it's telling you to type list files. You don't need the dash before it.
You don't need the dash here. Just list files. Yes. Okay. Enter. Press enter. Then space.
Yeah,
Then
right under
run.
that.
Then no run. Then the column. The
Runs on. Oh no, run.
oh should we do the column
No.
yet?
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we just want to run it. Then ls dash al. No. ls dash al. Okay, then that's fine. Let's run. It's an Ubuntu machine, right? I think that should be fine.
It should work.
Okay, now let's run. Let's run the action.
Another thing I'm thinking is, uh, so what I'm thinking, Wab, is this we are running it on the self-hosted runner. So you have to make sure that you've installed Docker on it.
Oh, that's true.
Docker, you have to make sure that
Docker is in the instance, right?
Yeah, whatever we were supposed to install, and that is properly configured on the self-hosted runner. Because if this is not from the code, then it is from that is where the issue is coming from.
But the Docker was in the was installed on a AMI that I recreated.
Yeah. So, I mean, if the issue is not on your code, then that's probably where if the issue is not on the code, then most likely it is how Docker is configured on your self-hosted runner.
So click on the list file. Click on list file.
The list file job or above the one that's
yeah. Okay, so the Docker file is there. The Docker file is there. So I think
can
we also check the Docker file itself to see?
Yeah, the Docker file is, I mean, that won't give him an error as long as his Docker file, because this is not even running the job at all. Yeah, but you can open your Docker file. Let's check. That's also true. Yeah, I think the Docker file is fine. Most likely is you have to, what AMI you are using, you have to make sure that Docker is properly configured on it. I think that's where the issue is coming from. So you have to go to that lecture and launch another EC2 instance. I mean, launch another EC2 instance, run the command to install Docker on it and make sure that at least from that standpoint, Docker is properly installed on your self-hosted runner.
I did install it and I checked Docker that version and works.
Okay, so let's go to where you are, where your self-hosted runner is. So
you mean on the console or
no, in this project, in your deploy pipeline. Second. Online. Can you go in your management console? And go to your AMIs. Okay, go back to your Visual Studio Code. Can you copy this AMI ID you have there and verify that it's the same one you have for your AMI on line 205?
It's the same thing.
Can we create an instance from this AMI and then run Docker, like a Docker ls and Docker ps and see if it works? Because sometimes you need, when you create an AMI, you need sudo privileges.
Yeah, that's true.
When you download Docker initially and you run you run your first command, you need sudo privileges. And there's a command in which you can use in which any user can access Docker. Yeah.
So you said I should create another instance?
Yeah, just create a regular instance now. We would use this GitHub Actions Runner AMI. When we'll log into the console and we will run a Docker command there. Since again in this AMI, Docker is already configured there, right? So launch instance. No. Let's use the AMI. Go scroll up. The AMI. Let's make sure. So go to recent or something.
Recent.
My AMI. My AMIs. Yeah. Owned by me. Yes. So GitHub Actions Runner. Yes. Okay, that's fine. So scroll down and continue. Just create the instance now. Make sure we can SSH into it, or we can access it from your console. Can you give it a security group as well, like, or something, so we can log in yet?
You said I should create a security.
So let's try and log in.
It should have the endpoint in this thing.
The endpoint. Okay, launch. Okay, launch instance. Yeah.
I think the endpoint is there. I'm not sure. Maybe not. So. Yeah. No, I don't think the endpoint is there. So you just have to launch another one can just launch it in the public subnet, create a security group, and SSH into it. Yeah, I don't think this project does not have the endpoint in it. But you should be able to connect to it from the console too. Is it in the public subnet?
I can connect with it through the CLI, but not on the console.
No, not CLI. We don't. CLI. Yes. Okay. Let's try and connect to it from the CLI.
Yeah.
But how is it going to connect to it from the CLI if it doesn't have the endpoint?
You can do that.
Does you have what's it called?
You can connect to it from the.
Since I have the key here, and so I think I should be able to connect. Do you want me to connect with this one?
let's try. Let's just make it easy. Let's launch it in a public subnet. Give it a security group and use EC2 Instance Connect.
I mean, if you launch in the public subnet, can't you just click on it and click connect from
Yeah.
connect to it from the right in his console? It'll let him connect because it's already authenticated that way.
Yeah. So is this one in the public subnets? The one that we created?
Yeah. To try, click on the name.
You mean this one is initializing, or we should
Click
look?
on
Yeah, just
click on the name. The box, not
no,
that
no,
one.
not this one. No.
This one?
Yes. Is it demo EC2?
It's not connected. It's not finished initializing.
No, it's fine. You can click on the box.
Connect. So he has a public IP before, so it is in the what's it called? It's in the public subnet. So go to EC2 Instance Connect. Is it Ubuntu or roots?
No, I think this down should connect.
Okay, perfect.
And
No, this is different.
that is even the wrong
Oh, yeah.
instance.
Yeah, because it's Amazon Linux, right?
So for that one, you should be using Amazon Linux too, because that is what that actions is based off. That's where the issue is coming from.
Amazon Linux too.
So you have to redo that lecture to create the AMI for your GitHub Actions runner.
I thought you said you updated the code already. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. So in this project, we are using different runners to run our job. There is a runner that allows us to build our Docker image. We are limited to whatever who created the runner wants us to do. In the video, I mentioned that the guy that created the runner we are using to build our Docker image, which is something I mentioned in the video, is that the runner, part of the requirement to use that runner is you have to run it on an Amazon Linux 2. It doesn't work for Amazon Linux 2023. So the runner you are trying to use to build your Docker image here is an Amazon Linux 2023 runner. I mean, your self-hosted runner is hosted on Amazon 2023. That runner we are using is not going to work.
Well,
On line 201.
200 and 201.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is go, if you copy that on Google, you will see the documentation. In that documentation, there is a requirement there. So can you copy line 201? Just the value in Google. Scroll down. Keep scrolling down. No, so scroll back up. You already passed it.
Okay.
Let's scroll up.
Oh, I can see it now. So go back to that inputs. Where there's inputs, the table that has the inputs. Scroll down. I think was it down or was it up?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
maybe it might
scroll
be
down.
down. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
requirements.
EC2 image ID. You can see this action is compatible with Amazon Linux 2
Sure.
images.
Okay. Okay.
So if we're going to use this action, then that runner has to be an Amazon Linux 2. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, I will downsize. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Assis. Thank you.
No problem.
Do you see the message that I put in the group when it said unable to connect to a server dial CPT? Well,
Yeah, so
it time
I
out.
I I see it. It's an IAM issue. It's an IAM issue, and keep in mind for Kubernetes. So I think since when Aziz actually did the course, and that's the thing about EKS, about this Amazon Kubernetes is every 4, 5, 6 months they are bringing in new things that's kind of affecting something. So you actually need to give a user permission, to access the cluster. Can you share if you have your what's it called? Can you share your screen? If you have a EC2 console, can you share your screen?
Mm-hmm. It ain't gonna let me get into my AWS. It keep timing me on out, but I could go to my VS
Can you
Code
sign? No,
and
can you reload here? Can you log in here?
what into
So can we do one thing? Hmm?
what's that?
Can we log in here? Like log into your is like your log in here,
Is
yeah.
yeah, the internet where I'm at, they ain't gonna let me do it. They ain't gonna let me do it because I'm running the Zoom and I got my VS Code open. Ain't gonna do it. Ain't gonna reload on it. The internet is not all that good.
Okay. Um
That go. But usually this the code that I kept running into that I kept getting.
yeah, so can you run that AWS configure, AWS STS configure command?
Yeah, sure. This
Yeah,
one, ID caller.
yeah, yeah.
But remember when I said I changed it back to the cloud
Yeah.
project? Remember
So
it was Dylan one?
yeah, so the way EKS works is that if I log in as Dylan1 and I create the cluster,
Mm-hmm.
only the default is only Dylan1 would have access to that cluster. In
Mm-hmm.
order to give cloud project user access to the cluster, you have to go into there's a CLI command, but I can't remember what the CLI command is now. But there's a way to do it on the UI. We actually did it the last time, where you actually give
Mm-hmm.
cloud projects user administrator access to the cluster. So when you're making that command, it can't reach the API server of the cluster simply because cloud project user doesn't have access to that cluster. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. So
I
if you
kind of
can,
think so too.
if
Yeah.
you change your CLI to Dylan1 and you run that kubectl create namespace, it would work.
Yeah, but when I do that and I start working a project and I get all the way to the end, it always time me on out for some reason. That's why I went back to the cloud project user
Yeah. So
and I
so
started all over again.
yeah. So that's the issue now. That's the issue you're getting out. So again, best thing I recommend is we nuke this cluster, we delete this cluster. You
Mm-hmm.
start afresh, like as mentioned. We make sure that we only use one user throughout the whole project. User who
Mm-hmm.
created the cluster, because the user who's creating the cluster has super user access. They can do anything. Now, if
Yeah,
any
right,
other
right.
user needs access to that cluster, you have to grant explicit permission to the user. So that's that's why you're getting a timeout issue.
Yeah, but I understand that, but for this cloud project user, I know I had to give him
Administration. Yeah. So the cloud.
information for his rent zone and
Yeah.
other missions.
So for Kubernetes, right? For EKS, IAM users are kind of different to Kubernetes users. So the IAM user can have administrative access to do anything in AWS, but to get into that cluster, they need it's like a two-layer. They need another set of permissions, unless they were the user who created the cluster. The user who created the cluster has access to anything, but if you're using a different user, even if they have administrative permission in all of AWS, they need specific permission on that cluster in order to use it. So that's why you're getting timeout.
Okay. All right. Cool. It ain't gonna let me do all of this at the same time. I wish it did, but the internet is not. It's not, man. I tried. Oh, hold on. I got something.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So like I said, just you can oh, are you in now? Can you go to your EKS? Can you go to EKS?
Okay.
The service here. Go to EKS.
Yeah, this is not gonna let me. Failed to list of paper.
Yeah, it's pretty slow. Yeah.
Yeah, even though I got all these balls, it's not gonna let me. I'm surprised it let me get here.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably the issue.
So make sure when you are ready to, if you want Wahab or someone to look at it for you, make sure you are in a space where everything is working properly. So so that everything can go smoothly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do have to go. So thank you, everyone. So
thanks, everyone.
when you are ready, just post your message in the Slack. If I'm online, I'll jump on to see, but you have to start back from the cluster spot. Everything ties back to what I said earlier. Understand how to configure your access key and secret access key. Is for this Kubernetes project, it is going to lead back to that, because that's the only way we are authenticating from the Kubernetes command line that is on your computer to your cluster in AWS. So
gotcha.
Yeah, make sure you set all those things correctly and it should work. You can just configure a default profile, because I don't think we are using a named profile in this project. So whatever you configure for your default profile, that is what this project is going to use.
Okay. All right.
All right. Okay.
I could go.
Thank you, everyone. I would see you next week, and if not, I'll keep you guys posted in Slack channel. If someone wants to run the meeting, I'm also open to that. But other than that, thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Aziz. Thank you.
All right. No problem.
Thank you, AZ.
No problem.
Yeah.
Aziz, can I talk to you offline?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks.
All right. No problem. Bye.
Okay. Yeah, see you.